Hey folks, Glissamall Designs here, and this is part 4 of the Tamiya 135th scale M4A3E8 tank build. So right off the bat, you're noticing, hey, you got a dirty desk. And yeah, for this video, I'm going to leave the desk dirty. Usually I have it nice and clean for the videos to show off, the work I've done. But because we're talking weathering today, I think it's a good idea to leave it dirty just to show you that, how we're doing things with the weathering and, how chaotic the desk can look when we're doing the weathering. So let's just get right into it, show you what we've done and how we do it. So as you can see, no longer clean. So what I like to use for the weathering, it's not one thing specific. I kind of use a little bit of everything, but mostly I like to use the oils, the Obtolongs there. Now how I do it is I take my odorless terpenoid right there and I put it in a container such as this, and then depending on the project, obviously we're talking tanks, so it's trotting through the earth and the dark mud, the industrial earth, and just a little bit of the starship filth. Now obviously this is for starships, but this is kind of a little bit of a mixture of engine grease, and it's not really black, but it's kind of just gritty and gross. So I'd take a little bit of that, and what I made is like this soup, as you can see right here. So obviously it's not much. I mean, this has been used, so there's not much left. But now this has been sitting in here for about 48 hours, so obviously because it's oils and stuff, it's going to take a long time to dry, but this is still usable, which is great. So if I continue to work on this tank, I'm going to still be able to use that. Now, I use the brushes as you've seen there. I got two, well, this isn't a brush, this is a sponge, but I usually, if I'm working on this part of the hull, I put it in this box. As you can see, it's been sitting in here just so it's not splashing all over my desk and whatnot. And then, whatever the hull or the turret, whichever part I'm working on. And then I take the brush, put it all over the tank, and then I use the sponge to soak up any, excess, and it gets rid of brush marks. So that's a little handy thing to consider. And then pretty much leaves a nice kind of like skin texture, I guess you can kind of say, but dirties it right up, as you can tell. And then after I let that dry for a good 24 hours, I went to use this right here. Now I really like MIG production stuff, like this pigment here is the trench earth, but with this stuff here, once it's on, I find it's on. There's no coming back from it. Like once it's dirty, it's it's dirty with this stuff. And I mainly use that around the track section. Now I'm not too sure if it'll pick it up, but if you see the brownish areas, it's on there. Now I did use some of the rust, which we'll talk about in a second, so you might be seeing some of the rust. Now I'm not going too heavy with the pigments right here because we're going to be doing a lot of mud. I just wanted some discoloration. So after using that, mostly on the track areas, or not the track so much because there's no tracks, but the track areas, but the road wheels and inside, the bogies and such, I moved on to the rust. So this is, last night I worked on this, so obviously this is getting to be somewhat dry. I used the light rust brown and the dark rust. Now, I did this part a little bit differently. So I made this right here is just the terpenoid in here, and then obviously I have the dark rust and the light rust on these little ketchup things. So I used these brushes and then this brush, and I went all along the seams, as you can see right here. And then I used this brush with maybe just some terpenoid on it, just to thin it out, or whichever, just to give that real used look. Now you got to be careful because you don't want to go too heavy with the terpenoid, otherwise you'll wash off all, this stuff off. But again, I didn't want, this stuff to be completely dry because I want the rust effects and everything to be, kind of almost like mixing in with the dirt, I guess you can kind of say. So that's the effect I wanted right there. So now we're getting that layering effect, that you see in tanks. So I'm quite happy with that. And then of course I really went heavy with the rust right down in there, which you would naturally see, rust would really get into those areas. And then fortunately that'll probably be a lot, covered up quite a bit once we get like the jerry cans and such and a lot of the stowage stuff on there. And we got the machine gun in there last night. So the weathering is coming along really, really well. Now I'm not too sure if the camera will pick it up, but we got rust, in the tires area, in there. Pretty much anywhere where you would see rust. Now also I added to, and this is thank you to Greg Kerr on your builds. I'm not too sure if you'll see it, but right here I drilled 2 little holes. It's because I watched your video, and then I obviously went to historical pictures and I actually drilled those holes. So it was actually your Fury video and your build there that you did, beautiful build, with versing your Tiger. Hope it's okay that I used your name. I drilled those holes right there for when the fuel overfilled, it would drain out, which makes sense. So if it wasn't for watching your videos, I would have left that solid. So if you are building this tank, there's a hole there you need to drill. So right there, and then one on the other side. So thank you, Craig, for doing that video there and pointing that out. And then there's one there. So if you want to make your model a little bit more accurate, drill those holes. So thank you so much. Now another thing you can do is that right there is, or was, once a popsicle stick. Now this will, you have to cut it down and sand it down a little bit. So obviously, the popsicle stick was once, here to here, so I had to cut it down and then sand it down just a little bit. This will go into here, like this, eventually, right? Now this is obviously will go right across here, and then this will be able, when I'm going to put tracks up here and then maybe a spare road wheel and such, and that's all this is. So it just was once a popsicle stick that I weathered with that stuff right there. Just basically dunked it in, and there you go. That's a simple thing. So you'll see this in a later video, obviously. So that'll sit right there. I got it nice and snug. So there, that's all that is. So there we go. That's the first stages of weathering. I'm going to really let this dry now for, I would say, about 4 or 5 days, and that'll really set in now. But you can tell with the different, flat sprays, and then the first shading that I did with the soot and such, it's, the different layering is starting to come out now. Now you can go back. I did use this a little bit, this around here, the light sand, mud, in different little areas here and there, just to rub, willy-nilly, just to add a little bit more. But now I'm really going to let this sit now, and once I get the tracks in the mail, they should be here in the next, I would say next week sometime. Then we can really start with the mud and such into here and whatnot, because I don't want to get too far at the weathering until I get the base done and then the mud done. Then we're going to really find out the terrain, right? Because I don't want to get this really weathered and then the terrain not match the weathering, if that makes sense. Otherwise the tank won't match. But obviously this tank has seen action in other places, so over time this tank would see action in different areas. So this is where I want to go with it for now, and then let it dry for a while, and then we're going to add the snow effect, like look at, like, the tank's been cold, so the frosting effect. But we can't do that until this the oils have dried. Otherwise the snow will mix with the oils, and then it just won't look right. It'll turn it, like the snow will kind of turn like the greenish. So once this is really dried, then we can start making the tank look like really like cold metal. If you've ever seen what cold metal looks like, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Especially those in cold climates such as I am in the in the Great White North. Metal has that weird look, especially with dark metals when it gets cold. So that's what we want to achieve. But for now, there we go. It's really coming along. I think the weathering is really looking nice. So thanks so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe as always. And I look forward to your comments on this. Thanks so much. Bye.